The corporate matrix has masterfully commercialized a dangerous psychological sedative. They call it patience. From day one, they condition you to pay your dues, climb the ladder rung by rung, and wait submissively for your turn to be noticed. Why? Because a patient employee is cheap, predictable, and perfectly aligned with their slow-motion hierarchy. But let's drop the sentimental myths. In a hyper-accelerated modern economy, patience is not a virtue, it is financial suicide. The system uses your waiting years to extract your highest energy prime focus while capping your market value. The elite 1% does not stand in lines, nor do they ask for permission to advance. They bypass the entire queue through ruthless velocity. Here's why waiting your turn is actively keeping you broke. The corporate matrix actively administers patience as a compliance sedative to ensure that high potential assets remain passive while their prime execution years are systematically gestured. When you accept the institutional narrative that you must wait your turn, you are voluntarily capping your own velocity to keep a slow-moving hierarchy stable. This manufactured waiting period has nothing to do with your readiness and everything to do with corporate utility. A talented professional who demands immediate market value disrupts the carefully payroll structures of the organization. By rebranding submission as a professional virtue, the system successfully neutralizes your urgency, turning a hyper-focused threat into a predictable, low-maintenance line item. You are told that time breeds maturity, but in reality, it simply breeds compliance, ensuring you stay long enough to be fully exploited without ever gaining the independence to challenge the gatekeepers. This compliance sedative feeds directly into the queue illusion, a stagnant mathematical trap designed to keep you waiting in a line that has no intention of moving at your pace. The traditional corporate ladder assumes a fair progression where time invested equals authority gained. However, the internal economics of modern management prove that this pipeline is structurally rigged. While you patiently wait for a legacy manager to retire or a bureaucratic vacancy to open, external market inflation and internal budget caps are actively diluting the value of your future reward. The mathematics of the corporate queue ensure that your incremental raises will never outpace the wealth generated by a single aggressive lateral leap. Relying on organizational patience means betting your financial sovereignty on a spreadsheet that treats your career longevity as a cheap liability rather than a premium asset. Breaking out of this stagnant mathematical trap requires a fundamental shift toward generational velocity, where speed, not institutional longevity, dictates your true net worth. In the hyper-accelerated digital economy, the old rules of compounding decades at a single firm are completely obsolete. Wealth is no longer accumulated by enduring a slow 30-year grind. It is seized by capitalizing on short, hyper-intense windows of market opportunity. High-status execution relies on compressing your timelines and forcing years of confessional growth into months of high-impact output. While the average workforce measures their progress in tenure, elite players measure theirs in operational velocity. If your current position requires you to slow down your natural processing power to match a sluggish corporate culture, you are actively burning your highest value equity, your time. Speed is the ultimate differentiator that separates the dependent employee from the independent force. Harnessing this generational velocity demands a structural pivot toward asymmetric audacity, which is the high-status art of completely bypassing established gatekeepers. Once you reject the linear timeline of the matrix, you realize that the traditional hierarchy only exists to protect those who cannot compete on raw execution power. Gatekeepers use arbitrary credentials and legacy protocols to slow you down because your rapid acceleration threatens their comfortable mediocrity. Overcoming this barrier requires you to stop asking for permission to advance and instead create a reality where your market dominance cannot be ignored. You do not wait to be picked. You weaponize your unique skills to force an immediate, undeniable shift in leverage. This calculated defiance strips away the power of institutional middlemen, allowing you to bypass the traditional queue entirely and position yourself directly at the absolute top of the economic food chain. Failing to deploy this asymmetric audacity triggers an irreversible phase of opportunity, decay, where perpetual waiting permanently erases your highest value execution window. Your professional life cycle has a distinct, high-energy peak where your cognitive agility, risk tolerance, and operational execution power are at an absolute premium. The matrix understands this temporal dynamic and actively tries to consume these prime years with hollow, endless promises of future validation. Every single month you spend waiting submissively for an institutional nod is a month where your unique market window actively decays. Market opportunities are highly volatile. They never wait for you to finish your self-imposed corporate sentence. When you choose patience over immediate, aggressive execution, you are trading your most explosive years for a weak, superficial illusion of security. By the time the system finally decides to grant you your turn, your sharp edge has been blunted, your market relevance has shifted, and the massive leverage you once commanded has completely evaporated into the bureaucratic ether. Perpetual waiting acts as a slow psychological drain on your strategic potential, transforming a high-performing threat into an average asset. To permanently halt this devastating opportunity decay, you must step boldly into the final evolution of your professional autonomy, sovereign acceleration, where you force the entire economic ecosystem to adapt completely to your personal timeline. You absolutely refuse to wait for market conditions to become favorable, nor do you ever modify your strategic pace to make legacy corporate systems comfortable. Instead, your relentless execution velocity and uncompromising standard create an overwhelming gravitational pull that compels competing entities, high-value clients, and traditional gatekeepers to operate strictly on your own terms. This level of master status dominance is achieved only when your elite skill set is so highly specialized and your execution is so incredibly rapid that you become an irreplaceable markets force. While the conditioned masses remain trapped in submissive defensive loops, begging for an annual performance review and waiting endlessly in the matrix's rigged lines, you are playing an entirely different game of total domain capture. Your systemic refusal to accept patience as a professional virtue transforms you into a highly volatile, unassailable threat to the corporate status quo. True financial sovereignty and institutional authority are never handed down as a cheap reward for long-term compliance. They are violently seized by the independent individual who commands the fire of their own structural urgency. By choosing ruthless velocity over passive, long-term waiting, you permanently elevate your personal status above the systemic noise, transforming your execution power into a sovereign empire that moves exclusively when you dictate.